So welcome in. So glad to have you here with us now and to have all our facilitators gathered and those of you who are watching in the future. Very excited to have you as part of this conversation. We're here tonight because for those of us who are living in this world and planning this retreat and doing this thing and have been dreaming about it for several months, it's very, very clear and clear to us what this is all about and what our direction is going in. But for those of you who have signed up to join or are not sure or just looking for more information, we wanted you to get to know us and get to know a little bit more about what the structure of the event and so forth is going to be. So we'll just chat a little bit, and at the end we'll open it up for questions. I say that because to keep us all present and in one direction, let's not use the chat box during the discussion itself. Let's all just stay together here rather than texting on the side, that kind of thing. And then towards the end we will open it up. So if there are any questions and so forth, just make a note of them and save it for that time. So one of the things that I wanted to start out with, I'm just going to throw it right back to Colin, because we were talking about how, for us, it's very clear what is a 5-element retreat or what is a study of the 5 elements. And for those who are not familiar with this sort of framework, which is a very specific lineage and heritage and tradition, what does it mean, Colin, for us to be studying and immersing ourselves in the 5 elements this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the broadest sort of macro level, what we're talking about is aligning the way that we live our lives, or at least trying to bring in greater awareness around following nature. And so, there's this beautiful line, I think it's from the Tao Te Ching. I believe Yamin can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but which is man follows the earth follows the cosmos follows the Tao, and the Tao follows itself. Something along those lines. And so starting with this idea of what does it mean to follow the earth? We see patterns that are cyclical and timeless, like the cycle of the seasons, and then a foundational substrate to reality, which is this 5-element model. And again, any model is just that. It's a model. It's a map. And so, what we're talking about is developing some understanding of this map of the 5 elements and trying to have an experience, exposing ourselves to the experience of the 5 elements, both in nature, but also in ourselves in terms of personality, psychosomatic makeup, and understanding the organ systems, understanding the way that food influences the body, the way that the seasons affect us, the climate, atmosphere, etc. So really what we're doing in organizing the retreat around the 5 elements is we are going deep into a map that can help us navigate our lives with greater harmony and with greater understanding. And, part of the reason that I wanted to organize the retreat in this way is because I personally have found tremendous value in having this as one of the filters or the lenses. We're all often talking about taking away the filters or lenses or conditioning or trying to see reality just as it is. But in this case, this is a filter or a lens that I think can be profoundly helpful in navigating our lives and bringing more harmony and understanding and depth into our lived experience. It's just a good map is one way to put it. But of course, water is a real thing. Fire is a real thing. Metal is a real thing. And these are phases of movement and change in life and in reality. And so we are studying the actual thing. What is water? How does water influence tea? We are made up of 60 to 70% water. But if you look at the, what did somebody say recently? Like the microscopic level, we're actually like 99% water or something. So approaching each element from all these different angles and practices, and then relating them to tea, to movement, to food, and to meditation, etc. It's just a way for us really to align with the natural world and with ourselves that can bring a tremendous amount of depth and meaning into our lives.
I love that. The word that comes to mind for me, rather than filter, right, which has a perception of sort of being clouding our vision, right, is framework, or map, I like as well. Let's throw it to Yamin. If Yamin, you want to unmute, introduce yourself, and add a little bit to us to this 5-element. What is the structure of the retreat? Now, you and Colin are the teachers who led the last 5-element retreat in August. So you are our returning staff or faculty or leaders, so to speak. What does it mean to you to be a leader or to direct this exploration of the 5 elements?
Hello, everybody. My name is Yamin, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. I have, in full disclosure, I am not a teacher and I don't lead. However, I am a student and as an explorer of the 5 elements through the traditions, to the Taoist tradition, and I practice Taoist medicine. And so I facilitate. And so and Rachel, you did nothing wrong. It is that it's not a title that I can live up to. The teacher is the water, the teacher is the fire, the teacher is my relationship with the water and the fire, and my relationship with the earth, and my relationship with metal. And all of that, as Colin said, is actually a map. It's not the reality, it is a map that helps us navigate this territory that we call us. And the territory, of course, we live with others. So it is in relationships, the relationships within ourselves and the relationship with others, that we find this framework, as Rachel put it, this map, a very interesting helper, I would say. So another tool to have in our tool bag. And it's very simple because we're made with all of those. And because this is a practice of simplicity and returning back to nature. So I see that we're all women here, at least here, except for Colin, who has an affinity with the female. And we all have cycled, right? We have cycled since we were 13, 14 until the present moment. So we know about those cycles. We know about being 4 seasons in one day sometimes, right? That before the period, after the period. So each of those cycles, sometimes we find that they are very much informed by certain qualities of these elements. So you're coming to the retreat to remember, not so much to learn, but to remember. And in the remembering, we're learning together. And yes, we are responsible to hold this container, to make it safe, to be attentive to your needs, and also to be attentive to what moves through as we gather together. I think that this is it, Rachel. I mean, it's not it, but just in a nutshell.
That's so beautiful. Every time you speak about this experience and your perspective on it, I'm so inspired. Do you want to share a little bit about the role that Qigong practice plays in that, and the 8 treasures practice?
Yes. Well, Colin invited me to his dream. I want to say that this is Colin's dream, and I would dare say Jade's dream. And indeed, in the dream, they invited the practice of Qigong. And in my experience, the practice of Qigong is the practice of witnessing how energy flows in our bodies and how energy flows outside of our bodies. And because I am an experiment, I like to experiment here on this land. And Qigong for the past almost 20 years, has been a huge ally in me experimenting with energy flow. So in the practice of the eight treasures has been transmitted by the Ni family, a family of Taoists that have transmitted this practice through generations. And again, it's very simple and very natural. And if you do your laundry, you're practicing Qigong, right? You're going from the washer to the dryer, right? This is one of the moves. If you are making love, you're practicing Qigong. There is that exchange with the energy in whichever ways you practice love, making love. So again, this is a way to remember who we are as energy flows and where the energy may get stuck, and we call that pain. So the practice of the eight treasures, which we will be practicing the little eight, not because they are small, but because it is the abbreviated version of the long form, which is 32 movements. So we will be learning or together what it means to practice being focused on how Qi flows in our bodies. And then if you resonate with the practice, you can take it with you and continue to practice. And again, it can be your practice for the rest of your lives. I don't believe that one lifetime is enough to really enter and be with all the different aspects that we can be with. And my experience will be different from anybody else's, and your experience will be different probably as you go through each season in your life. So it's a delight to share and to facilitate and to listen to what it is that comes into being as we gather together. The practice of Qigong is a practice of community. That's the way I feel it. It's the community with the land to begin with. It's the community within, and it is the beings that we practice with. So that's why I cannot teach it, because it is something that emerges as we gather.
That's
Colin,
beautiful.
anything else? You as a Qigong practitioner and the inviter, the host?
Yeah, I'll say one thing. I mean, I feel like you just so eloquently explained and explored your relationship to Qigong. Anything I could say in addition, I feel like would just be like undermining what you just shared. But there's something I would like to say from a personal experience, which is that this form, again, Yamin described it once as coming home, that it feels like home. And with this form, you know, I've practiced different types of yoga or Tai Chi or other movement arts. There's something about the eight treasures form that feels so nourishing and true and deep. And there's something, I don't know, there's a lot of juju in it. I don't know how else to really say it, except that the movement of Qi and this opening of the subtle body and the flow of the movements seem to have an infinite depth. Meaning I practiced it quite seriously some years ago when I first learned it with Yamin, and then I wavered a lot, and then have gotten a lot more serious about the practice in the recent years, and especially in the past year, you know, really making a commitment to practice it every day. And what I'm finding is just that there is so much depth in it. And so while, yes, there's a simplicity to it because it's following the natural movement of the elements, there's also a tremendous depth. It seems to just open and open and open and to continue to unfold. So I'm learning a lot about the form from the form itself. And so, of course, there's a learning of the actual physical movements themselves. But once one has learned the physical movements, then it's about opening up into deeper levels of beingness and of flow and a different understanding of what it is to be in a human body that seems to, like the horizon line keeps moving, keeps expanding kind of. So I don't know. That is all to say, I really love this form. And I think the reason that it's so wonderful to share it with people, and I'll speak for myself, the reason I wanted to share it with others and for Yamin to come and share it is because I just think it's such an extraordinary and beautiful movement practice. And that I think there's so much for people to learn from it and to gain by it. That's it. That's all I want to say.
Well, one of the ways that you described the Qigong practice, one of the phrases you used immediately made me think of Jade. You said the practice is witnessing how energy flows. And that just immediately spoke to, Jade, what I know of your artwork and just the way that you live your life. One aspect of the wood element is regeneration, growth, creativity, right? That's what's represented to us in the spring as the trees come back and all of these sort of growth symbols and images of wood. Jade, do you want to introduce yourself and share a little bit about your offering?
Sure, thank you. My name's Jade Rose, and I used to lead retreats years ago. And for a long time, I've been very seriously practicing the art of painting alone, which is what you have to do as a painter. And so as a painter, you have to be able to balance the tidal waves of emotion and the desires to burn things and the constant creativity that comes if you're always ready to catch it. That's what Picasso says, there's always inspiration. Inspiration always comes, but you have to be in the studio to find it, to catch it. And so studying with Yamin is one of the things I'm looking forward to most, because I think that someone who has been working for that long in the healing arts, in that modality, has a certain gravitas in their energy, and Colin as well, and the tea house as well. I'm honored that my paintings are part of that energy. And I feel that art is a form of movement that works without words. And so that is the way I prefer to be with people, in the depth of silence, in the depth of meditation, in the depth of tea ceremony. And from that depth, we can listen to the elements as they're speaking to us in the ancient silent languages that they speak in, that we seem to have mainly forgotten, but that we all inherently know. And so what I'm offering is a vessel through which the beauty of the tea ceremony can flow, and the reverence for this land. This is my home. I've been here since I was a little girl, since I was born, and this is a sacred space, and we're right in the center of this sacred valley, which has always been a sacred valley, and which was used by the miners, but which is now being cleansed. And I think that these retreats, which we're so lucky to be helping with, they are contributing to the great change I feel in this valley as people wake up and see that this is a sacred land. I mean, we've been discovered, and so there's this movement, I think, towards protecting that which is sacred, because we're afraid that we might lose it. And I think that balancing the elements feels like such a beautiful thing for us to do for ourselves, for us to do for the land, and for the land to do for us. And I'm just really honored to be here and share that. I also study tarot and I Ching, which I know that Yamin has studied I Ching extensively. So I'm happy to offer I Ching readings, and we can listen to the great wisdom that she has gained over her many years of studying that form. So I hope that answered your question.
I think it does. Now, I think we're all artists on this retreat in our own forms, and that's where I want Kat to come in and introduce herself. Kat is going to be facilitating tea ceremony just as Jade is, and Kat is also a filmmaker, a documentarian, providing a lot of different services during the week. So Kat, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're going to be doing?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kat. I'm here in cold Los Angeles. um, I really appreciate hearing everyone speak and hearing about, you know, that we all are practitioners, we all are students, and I really feel like we're all artists and we're all our own healers too. And so yeah, I'll be sharing the way of film and photo during the retreat, as well as serving tea and generally supporting everyone. So I feel like something that resonated with me is just hearing about simplicity and depth together, and how retreat space, I think, really is so special. And something I'm really excited about with this retreat in particular is that it is actually a retreat and an intensive and not just a vacation. I think that's really important. And I've really benefited from going on retreat over the years, different forms of retreat. But I think the thing that I keep coming back to is like, wow, having a space of simplicity and of purity is so imperative in this day and age for experiencing depth and experiencing meditation. I mean, there's just so many distractions, constant distractions. And so I'm really grateful to Colin and to Jade for hosting us in a place that, you know, will provide this energy field for us to really drop in and to really just be with each other and to really be with the land and to be with the elements in this way. I've benefited so much from this, and it's something that I have to keep reminding myself of. And the way that I remind and remember, as Yamin said, is through daily practice and creating as much of a space, you know, within the chaos of the city as I can to drop in. And so that's something that sitting with tea has given me, has afforded me, is just a time and a place to be with what is and to be with the elements. And one more thing I wanted to reflect on is I really appreciate how accessible this practice is, and how the little that I know and have experienced of Qigong, and I'm really excited to dive in deeper in this practice, but just how accessible these practices are. I think healing should be accessible, you know, to all levels of abilities and all ages and all income. And, you know, it's like the way we can bring this more into our lives and the way that we can invest in our own healing is what expands and shares that with our community. So I just really appreciate having these practices, having them be accessible to me, and I'm just really grateful to be a part of it.
That's great. So I'm the last one to introduce myself here. I'm Rachel. I'm the owner and creator of Still Life Meditation out here in the suburbs of Chicago. I've been practicing meditation in a lot of different ways since I was very young, and most recently in the straightforward Zen inspired mindfulness kind of world. And last year I joined on the staff of Living Tea and have been immersed in that ever since. You know, one of the things that, again, coming back to one of the things that Yamin said, she described Qigong as witnessing how energy flows. And that type of awareness, that perspective of witnessing what is already happening, right? That's one of the things that really inspires my meditation practice. In fact, I was watching a John Kabat-Zinn video a few days ago, and he described mindfulness as our relationship to events as they are unfolding. And again, what Colin was describing about the 5 elements, you know, this is not something which is separate from us. Awareness is not separate from us. Meditation is not separate from us. And there are so many things, to your point, Kat, that seem very inaccessible because of the way they are marketed to us, or the version of it that we see on Instagram, right? That kind of thing. But all of these practices are that remembering and that reminding, or as Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche says, that meditation is coming home, right? It's coming home to those things which, especially for the last couple of years, have been so difficult to partake in, like community, right? Like travel, you know, all of these things which are very difficult or very fraught with stress and with monitoring and these sorts of things, right? This opportunity that we have and these practices that we are sharing are coming back to what is already innate within us, which is very difficult to sustain and remember in average everyday life these days. So very excited to be facilitating meditation and tea ceremony on the retreat. We do have a good amount of time left I want to make sure we leave time to address any questions now that those present have sort of met us here who will be on the retreat and facilitating. If you do have any questions, feel free to unmute or drop them in the chat box. Otherwise, we'll just keep on chatting and sharing what kinds of things we're going to be sharing on the retreat.
Could I add one thing?
Yeah, please.
I think it sets a nice context for the 5 elements as personality types, because I had never heard of the 5 elements, and I was thinking, oh, it's connected to the 4 elements or something else, and it really isn't. It's its own thing. And the reason we haven't heard about it is because Chairman Mao attempted to suppress it from the world and then created something he called traditional Chinese medicine, which was an amalgamation of things that don't fit. And I was really surprised when I heard that, and it made me understand more, like, oh, this is a secret art that actually someone tried to keep from us. That's a beautiful way of health and longevity and balance. So I'm really excited to study more, and I feel quite honored to be learning from 2 people who know so much about it. And I'm also really looking forward to your meditation classes, Rachel.
Thank you. Janine, I saw that you had unmuted. Did you want to ask a question?
I did. So I've been trying to figure this out on the internet. What's the, and I think the question would be for Yamin, what's the difference between Qigong and Tai Chi?
Have you ever practiced Qigong or Tai Chi?
You know, a long time ago, I went to a few classes, but I'm not even sure what I did.
You remember if you moved in a space or if you stayed in one place, or
I believe I stayed in one place.
Yeah, you probably practice Qigong.
Oh,
And so we call Qigong a foundational practice. Like the idea is to practice Qigong first and then practice Tai Chi, because with Tai Chi you move more in the space.
Mm-hmm.
And the intention is to be able to move in a space with this feeling of being grounded and being solid, stable, right? So you don't move in the space and then you end up being taken by the wind, by a strong wind, which would be by a strong emotion or by a thought, right? And so my teachers would say, if you want to practice Tai Chi, first explore within yourself the practice of Qigong. I was very interested in practicing sword, Tai Chi sword, and I would end up with a lot of internal dialogue every time I did it. I would end up like wanting to go out there and you know, follow my my tendencies in my life. And I ended up with a very very bad headache most of the times. And so I asked my teacher, what am I doing wrong? And he said, you're not practicing Qigong. You got to come back to that boring, steady practice, which I don't find boring at all. So that's my experience of the difference between Tai Chi and Qigong. They could go together very well. And it's a matter of resonance at the end of the day. So you may practice Qigong and say, wow, I wish I could move, more into space. And so you may be ready to explore Tai Chi. So that's a short version based on my experience of this. If there is a difference, because again, it's the movement of energy. So we have all these labels that serve the purpose of, of language, which is good, serves the purpose of discriminating what you need or what you don't need, more than discriminating, discerning. Then it's one practice. If you don't feel like practicing Qigong, practice breathing with intention.
Mm-hmm.
So the refinement of that is Qigong, the refinement of breath, the intentional breath, right? Where does the breath go? Your intention follows, and something happens in that. So you can practice meditation, Qigong, being a mother, being a single woman, anything with that intention of being a witness to the movement.
Right.
And then you see where that takes you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I didn't have any preconceived, I don't have any expectations. I wasn't sure if they were very similar or an extension of each other. So I just kind of wanted to get some clarity, but it sounds like they're very different to me from what I'm hearing. And that's fine.
I don't know if Colin, you want to say anything more?
Yeah, I just want to say one or two things. One is because Qigong, as in this lineage that Yamin and I have been learning it, is seen as a foundational practice, does not mean that it's on some hierarchical level of higher or lower or more difficult or more advanced or less advanced. That would be a misunderstanding of the form. You could practice this form of Qigong, even the Little 8 form, for your entire life and reach a level of depth or understanding that is just as profound, if not more profound, than practicing some other Taoist movement form. So I think that's an important distinction. It's not like, oh, we're getting Taoist arts light. It's this Qigong form is quite profound, and in and of itself is a practice one could carry through an entire lifetime. One thing that I remember reading about in learning the Tai Chi form that is also in this family lineage, I read a book that was written by one of the people who was sharing this form, one of the brothers. And if I'm remembering this correctly, which I'll have to go back and check, but I'm pretty sure I remember this correctly, Qigong was defined as a form for the cultivation or the development of Qi, or what he calls energy enhancement exercises. Whereas Tai Chi is described more as a form for the harmonization of Qi. And so my way of thinking about it, erroneously or accurately, I don't really quite know, is that with the Qigong form, there is building a foundational structure and a foundation in the practice for cultivating Qi, cultivating energy or life force or whatever you want to call it. And Tai Chi is more a form to then harmonize that energy. I don't know if Yamin has a thought or reflection on that idea, but that's one of the ways that I kind of think about it.
I like it. And the way that I feel my relationship with the practice is that the practice practices me. It is that's why I don't like to define these things much, because then I will give you, I will paint a picture that might not be your resonance. And then you would say, oh, I'm doing something wrong. I'm not feeling it. I hear this a lot. I'm not feeling the chi. If I tell you, look for temperature or look for vibration, which I sometimes do, then I feel like, well, but what do I know? Because my friends here, my cat friend is feeling chi in a way that I don't know, because I don't perceive the way that cats perceive. I can communicate, but not, so I don't know your perception. What I know is that during this time together, you will get a chance to look through those different lenses, as Colin and Jade put it, which are the lenses of these in this map of the different elements. And your entry, your gateway into the practice will be informed by that element. And we will make it explicit that we are practicing in the spirit of fire. We are practicing in the spirit of water. We're practicing in the groundiness and the spirit of earth, right? And we are informed by metal. What that means for you, that's the it of the retreat. We're not here to teach. We're here to invite a mindfulness bell and then hear from each of us, what's that response? How you as a mindfulness bell respond? What's the resonance that this invites, right? And this map invites. So I would be very curious to ask you, what does Qigong mean for you? Right? What is this? And of course, my responsibility is to provide as many images and elements as possible for you to be able to access the movement, right? In a safe way. So I have training in the Alexander technique. So I see people's posture, for example, and see if you're doing this with your head, then chances are that you're gonna have some sort of upper back pain. And so just to be, just put my hand in there and say, hey, there could be another way to do this. So go like this and go like this. But that is basically, my role is to make sure that you're not gonna sink in the practice. But then what your resonance is absolutely personal and communal also. It depends on what community field we build together for the experience to be this or that. So that is the reason why I don't like to give out too many definitions, because I mean, there are books written on this. And if you're hungry, intellectually speaking, Colin has stacks of books that he can share. I have a few, and he is excellent at articulating it. I prefer to hear from you and be in the field, in the body, and feel it, right, together.
That's
so
beautiful. Thank you for
that's
that.
a preference. I hope it answered your question.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Another question from Julie is about food, and our chef wasn't able to join us tonight. So Colin, maybe I'll have you share a little bit of the discussion you've been having with her on the food. The question is, can you just share a little bit more about it? And also how much more logistically, how much is included on the retreat in the cost and so forth?
In terms of food?
Yes.
Okay. So the menu is evolving. We have a really great start to it. And where we're kind of meeting is Suzanne, our chef, has formal training in Ayurvedic cooking. And in Ayurvedic and Taoist approaches to diet, there are a lot of herbs and foods and philosophy and ideas that cross over. And so a lot of what we're doing is she she is expanding her palette and her practice as a chef that's focused on food that nourishes, that has a functional basis, but also that is delicious. Of course, having people come to the retreat and say, on the wood day, all we ate was grapefruit and greens. That was really uninspiring, but apparently it's good for the wood element or whatever. We want food that is nourishing. We're going to be, the retreat's immersive, and we really mean that. A lot of the days start at 7:30, and there's a break in the middle of the day, and then it ends at 9 or 9:30 at night. So being really nourished is an important part of the day, just from a place of having the energy to show up. Now, if that schedule sounds overwhelming, a lot of it is sitting in silent meditation or silent tea ceremony or mindfulness practices. And, I will bring this back to food, but mindfulness practices tend to be energizing. They're often not enervating. We find reservoirs of energy that we didn't realize we had. Oftentimes if you go to a long meditation retreat, there's a night during it where you don't sleep at all, but somehow you aren't tired the next day. So to bring that back to the nourishment, our focus is going to be on food for each day that corresponds to, resonates with the element of the day. And so what that means is, and there are some talks about food, vitality is one of the overarching themes of the retreat. And such an essential part of vitality is nourishment, and not just nourishment food, but how do we really nourish ourselves? And reflecting on that as an idea. And so again, as Yamin was saying, experience in many aspects is what we're focused on, is inviting people through a doorway into an experience of the 5 elements. If I just sit there all day and share a bunch of academic information about the elements, I promise you that not only will you want to leave after 24 hours, but you can leave the retreat going, it was interesting. But saying something was interesting is an intellectual response. Oh, it was very interesting. Yes. Yes. Oh, yes. Professor Hudon shared some information about the wood element and the liver. And that's not going to be in any way touching us at a deeper level, at the level of being. And so with food, there are going to be some conversations and talks about nourishment that is a bit conceptual, the types of foods, the 5 flavors of foods, types of herbs, and ways to think about nourishing the body in the vital organs of the body during the different seasons, which is a big part of Taoist medicine, which might be just incorporating more herbs and greens and some specific flavors into the spring food that you eat. Or some introductory ideas around herbalism or around cleansing. But again, this is not a retreat that is just about food. That is one of the elements of this exploration of the elements. So the primary meal where we'll be talking and exploring these concepts will be the dinner. We have a family style meal each night. And we'll be incorporating herbs and foods and colors into the food and talking about that. And then the breakfast is going to be a simple but very healthy and nourishing breakfast. Again, so we have energy throughout the day. But the breakfast isn't like some huge buffet, it's kind of simple and delicious and healthy. And lunch every day is up to you. And some people might want to fast during lunch on some days. The meals that will be provided during the retreat will be the breakfast and dinner. And then we have healthy kind of snacks that you could purchase and take with you on treks, or if we're out doing things, we'll have healthy snacks available as well.
One of the recommendations from a past guest of the August retreat was also to visit, at that time, the farmer's market was running in Telluride, so that was open. They said, go to the market, get some fresh stuff, keep it in your fridge, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of things to explore. Dining out is expensive in Telluride. To be honest, you can check out some restaurants and look at the menus online and so forth. But as Colin mentioned, there's lots of options and nourishment and ways that you can plan your lunch meal then. Thanks for that question, Julie. That's great. The last thing in our last couple of minutes here, I wanted to share is a discussion that we as facilitators had, which is that one of our primary goals of this retreat is to give people the resources, the tools, the foundation for practice that will continue once you've left. And I think that in this, in this discussion and in, looking at the information on the website and so forth, it's clear that there's so much that's offered and so much richness and so many different practices and things to explore. But our aim is to, create that foundation and give you enough of each of these things, so to speak, to then continue on with those. And as Yamin said, find and observe that energy in your daily life. And one thing like Qigong or tea or whatever it may be, or ceramics, right? We're going to be throwing some tea bowls together on our Earth Element Day. One of these things might touch you and really become an important part of your daily practice after you leave us. But our goal is that each of these offerings is meaty and yes, interesting, but also touching and also powerful and immersive for all of our guests. Does anyone want to add to that?
I just want to say a few days in deep practice with a community of serious meditators, practitioners, artists, and drinkers of tea. A few days in a community like that can be life-changing, and I'm looking forward to the great leap that I will experience as a result of helping to facilitate this retreat. And I know that for every person that comes, it will be a life-changing experience. And it's the kind of life-changing experience that if you take, like she was saying, if you take something with you that really touched you and allow that to grow within you, the change comes bit by bit in your own dedication to yourself. So I'm really looking forward to that. And thank you. Thank you, Yamin. Thank you, all of you. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you to those of you who are coming. And thank you, Colin.
Nice.
Any parting words at our last minutes here? Open up to anyone.
I'd like to just say one thing, which is that in the first retreat, so participants are receiving one of the great benefits of coming to this retreat, which is that the first retreat in August was beautiful in so many ways. I mean, as the facilitators talked about it retrospectively, and continuing to have an ongoing relationship with a number of the retreatants, the reflection back, as Jade was saying, was this was life-changing. I took this one thing or these couple practices, and that it really was something that was a profound and uplifting and much needed experience for a lot of people. And that being said, there, from the inside looking out, the inside looking in, I don't know, looking at something. There were things that we learned as facilitators on the retreat where we went, oh, if we just turn the dial a little there, or just tweak that thing, or create a little more time for this, or focus on that, or cut that out entirely, that the retreatants coming on this retreat are benefiting by the insights and reflections we had from the first retreat. So it's just dialed a little more. And I think that that will really be felt for the retreatants on a number of levels, hopefully invisibly. If we do our job well, you just go, man, that worked amazing. But one of the big things, and this is something I want to emphasize, is that one of the ways we're shifting the retreat is a focus on not only the experience during the retreat, but also subsequent to the retreat, that you leave with some foundational practices that we've revisited day after day, so that you go, I have a good flavor, a good sense of that practice. And if you want to continue that practice, all the resources are available. You can continue to explore it in greater and greater depth, but that at the very least, you leave the retreat and the foundations in place. So I just say that because there is real benefit to coming to this retreat instead of the very first one. And also that in the first retreat, there was a lot of meandering, and it was wonderful meandering, and it's exactly what needed to happen. But we were trying to go so much into each retreat or each element of each day that sometimes it was this meditation today and tomorrow it's this meditation. And I think in some ways it got in the way of simplicity, refinement of here's a core practice. And you can continue with that practice ad infinitum or stay with it for a period of time, and you'll have the resources to go deeper subsequent to the retreat. So I just wanted to kind of emphasize that point, is that's we've spent a lot of time around the intentionality of every aspect of the retreat. And then of course it would be very un-Taoist of us to say, nope, it's just going to be like this. We can't waver at all. There is fluidity. This is the water course way, and being open to the possibility of transformation and change and the schedule shifting and the weather changing, of course. But that we are taking everything we learned from the first retreat and bringing it to the second one. So.
Absolutely.
One thing I'd like to say is that for people who were present in the first retreat and you would like to come to this one, this is not going to be the same intention. We are going to explore wood from the lens of each other element. So we're going to be paying attention at your purpose, your vision, and the shadow, what gets in the way of that, and really not use, but explore each of the elements as informants, if you want, as what is it that we hear when we are in the earth element, when we are in the wood itself, when we are in the water element. So there is an intentionality that is very particular to this season, the season of the spring, directionality. So we're responding to that element, to the wood element. So it's never going to be one retreat, it's never going to be the same as the other one. But last one was an exploration, an intro to the 5 elements. So it's not like you guys who will join us again, missed out something then. That was an introduction, and now we're going more into it. Is that true, Colin?
Yeah, absolutely. And, so we will be emphasizing and focusing on the wood element. And also we'll be giving some more introductory material to explore prior to the retreat, so that, Janine or Julie or other people who hear this little chat, so that they can start to explore the 5 elements in greater depth prior to the retreat, and also get maybe a little better sense of their own sort of constitutional makeup. We all have all 5 elements in us, but we tend to have a stronger proclivity or stronger expression of one element. So if we're really exploring, say, the wood element and the relationship between anger and benevolence or kindness, generosity, etc., what if you're a water element, what makes you angry is maybe something related to safety and security or something. Whereas if you're a wood element, it might be something about injustice. Whereas if you're, or not being seen or something. So we're going to try and bring in some more depth in exploring the wood element. And that will come through the experience of being in Telluride at that time. So it's not like you don't need to read a bunch of books about this. There is water gushing out of every corner of the mountain at that time of year. everything is coming to life and is green and exploding, the flowers. And you will feel the minute you get into this valley, whoa, what is this? There is a rising wood energy that's very strong at that time of year, which is why we're doing it at this time of year. So it's not, if you want to just be at the embodied level, and I actually want to open up the question to Kat about embodiment, because this is something she's done a lot of work on around this topic. But if you don't want to go to a conceptual or intellectual level at all, it's not necessary for this retreat. The experience of being here and the intentionality around bringing these elements into the retreat is going to be felt while you're participating. So yes, you mean we'll be going more into the wood element than other elements, but that doesn't mean we're not going to be touching on and pulling from the other elements as well.
Kat, if you wanted to add anything on that, that'll be our last little comment for the evening.
Yeah, I feel that what Jade said before of really showing up fully for this experience with others and the resonance that happens and that alchemy that happens internally is something that that's what creates embodiment, and that's how we're going to be learning together. And while there's so much available in terms of reading and intellectualizing, it's being together that's actually going to, somebody said earlier, learning from the form. I think Colin said that. So like learning from the experience of being with each other, and really paying attention to what happens and the shifts that happen. And then that creates the external embodiment of what we bring out into the world from there, which is really profound. So so much more to explore, but I'll leave it at that. That's my reflection.
Great. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us. Like I said, this recording will be shared online right now after we're done. And if there are any further questions, any information that you need, you can always reach us via email. Our email is livingteas@gmail.com. And if there's anyone that is searching for these kinds of practices, a friend or a family member of yours, feel free to point them towards this recording, towards our website, to reach out, give us a call. We'd love to share more information and welcome you in to this retreat. So thank you again. We're so looking forward to this event. Enjoy the rest of your evening.